Very good afternoon, everyone. We are just waiting for some more individuals who are joining, and then in next 1 minute we'll start off. Right. So a very good afternoon to each and every participant. Today we all have gathered for an important topic, which is fecal calprotectin, non-invasive tool in the hands of clinicians. Now, as a test, fecal calprotectin has been gaining lots of prominence in IBD. It is being slowly and slowly evolving as an investigations, which clinicians are increasingly using it. And during the current COVID times also, slowly and slowly, more and more clinicians are going in for this test. So this is a very important and interesting topic. We have two learned speakers today, Dr. Pathik Parekh, whom I'll introduce, and Dr. Himanshu Majumdar. So Dr. Pathik Parekh is a senior consultant hepatologist, liver trans physician, gastroenterologist, and therapeutic endoscopist from Zydus Hospitals, Ahmedabad. He has done his Doctors of Medicine in Gastroenterology from Lokmanya Tilak Municipal Medical College and Hospital, Mumbai. Sir has been trained in transplant hepatology and is well versed in diagnostic and therapeutic endoscopies and ERCPs. He is the only hepatologist in entire Gujarat to be trained in India, US, UK, and Japan. He also has been a visiting fellow in Kindai University, Osaka, Japan, and on clinical attachment at Mayo Clinic, Jacksonville, Florida. So I'll hand over the baton to Dr. Pathik Parekh, and he'll take it over for the first session.
I need to be able to share my screen, please.
So you just directly share, yes.
So I'll be talking on fecal calprotectin today, and in that sense, as a clinician, when would I be using this fecal calprotectin? So why do I need to come up with such a topic, that why, when, and why would I use it? So this is a very interesting article published just recently. They have looked at it's a survey where observational study carried out in Mexico, and Mexico is no different from India. So if you see, out of 460 patients with IBD participated, mainly had ulcerative colitis. Of those, 41.9, that is 42% of participants stated that they did not know of a non-invasive test for fecal matter to identify inflammation of colon. More than 50% did not even know about the test. More than 50% again said that they had never received such a test. More than 75% recognized that this was difficult to access. And more than 50% again had noted that they had never been prescribed such a test by their consultant gastroenterologist who is taking care of their IBD. And nearly 90% said, this is very important, nearly 90% stated that they would prefer fecal calprotectin analysis for their IBD for their follow-up assessments rather than undergoing a sequential endoscopies. So this is a test which is not conveyed to the patient. The specialists are not prescribing this test, and patient themselves would prefer this test given a choice to them. So why are we talking about this fecal calprotectin? Why test for fecal calprotectin? It's simple. It's rapid, sensitive, specific, inexpensive, non-invasive. So whenever you are looking for a test, you are looking for this modality, and they are all fulfilled by this test. But before I present a clinician's perspective from fecal calprotectin, this is something which is published this year, where there is a consensus on the methodological issues in standardization of fecal calprotectin. So if you look at the statement 2, which says that the most appropriate timing is unclear. Statement 3 says that it's a single stool specimen is usually sufficient. And now going to statement 8, this is very important, because when we are prescribing a test of fecal calprotectin, the person cannot go and keep on changing the laboratories where he is getting the test done, because each one is different, and they should keep on carrying the test at the same laboratory where they have got it done. Just 6 months back, before this publication, Journal of Crohn's Colitis, that is the most important journal for clinicians for IBD, they had mentioned that the timing of sampling, they preferred that the first morning sample is generally collected. However, it was not mentioned in the recent publication. Now, there are different modalities. I would not go into the detail of this because it is going to be covered in the next session. But there are 3 different modalities available to test for fecal calprotectin. Each one of them different measurement range and cutoffs. But if you are getting a test by one laboratory, you need to get it done at the same level again and again. Also, before prescribing fecal calprotectin to a patient, we should know that even healthy individuals have different cutoffs. But if you look at adults, the usual cutoff is nearly 40, less than 50. But in children, it is quite high. That before prescribing, we should be aware of this. So whenever we are prescribing fecal calprotectin, again, this is taken from an NHS website. This is very simple. Less than 100, you are quite okay. 100 to 250, it's a gray zone, and more than 250, you need to investigate for IBD. So this is how we test for fecal calprotectin. Now, I would be talking on how do you use it and what are the different reasons and when we can use it. So these are different indications where we are using fecal calprotectin, and I'll be covering very rapidly, very briefly each of this topic. But the most important thing remains is differentiate irritable bowel syndrome from inflammatory bowel disease. Now, 1 in 5 patients who present to our clinic usually present with abdominal pain, pain relieved by defecation, bloating, dyspepsia, and we never know whether this, and they are all young individuals. So at the age, IBS and IBD both are common. And a lot of times we undertake a colonoscopy to rule out inflammatory bowel disease in these individuals. So first, can this test be able to differentiate IBS from IBD? So calprotectin is very rarely elevated and mildly elevated in patients of IBS. So if you look at this publication, fecal calprotectin has excellent negative predictive value. This just published a couple of months back, and they have said that negative predictive value of fecal calprotectin in condition of altered bowel habit or abdominal pain in predicting colorectal cancer or any inflammation were 93.8 and 100%. So fecal calprotectin has extremely good negative predictive value, and it should be used to try and prioritize the need for further investigations in patients presenting with abdominal pain. In UK, they have actually come about with major criteria, minor criteria. I would not go into the detail of it, but based on this criteria, we should get a patient on fecal calprotectin. If the fecal calprotectin is negative, then the chances that the patient would have an IBD are extremely low, and the negative predictive value was 96%. And this clearly shows IBD versus non-IBD. So whenever you carry out a symptom-based evaluation of a patient, and when we get stuck with IBS or IBD, instead of directly progressing to a colonoscopy, you may consider fecal calprotectin. If it turns out to be negative, you may even avoid a colonoscopy. But can we safely avoid it or not? Let's see. In individuals who are young, that is 18 to 30 years, if you look at the last line of the slide, the negative predictive value is nearly 100%. Even for 30 to 39%, the negative sensitivity remains 100%, and the negative predictive value is 100%. So in a young individual, young adult, where there are chances of colonic cancer are very low, if fecal calprotectin is normal, we can safely exclude IBD. This is again recent publication where they have said that they have assess the accuracy of fecal calprotectin for IBD. So what they have done is, can the primary caregivers or general practitioners or physicians who look after so many such patients can carry out fecal calprotectin, and can it avoid a colonoscopy? So what they have done is, if they do a fecal calprotectin and if it is negative, then they have followed up this patient for development of IBD, and for 24 months there is no absolute development of IBD with an extremely good negative predictive value. So if you look at the right corner, negative predictive value is more than 99%. So they concluded that GPs can be confident in excluding IBD on the basis of negative fecal calprotectin test in a population with low pretest risk, but should interpret a positive result with caution. One thing very important, like if the fecal calprotectin is elevated, that is not diagnostic of IBD. So if a fecal calprotectin is elevated, and if a colonoscopy is normal, is there a more risk of developing of IBD? No. So they have looked at the study where elevated fecal calprotectin was followed up for 3 years, and none of them developed IBD. So fecal calprotectin has a very good negative predictive value, but a positive predictive value is not there. And if it is elevated, it should not be labeled as an IBD. It should be further investigated by an endoscopy. This is where all the confusion ends, like IBS or IBD. Once you label the person as IBD, then the utility of fecal calprotectin remains for the rest of his life. And at what stages does it remain? So diagnosis is done. Now we need to assess the disease activity. So inflammatory type of Crohn's disease would have a higher fecal calprotectin level, and in ulcerative colitis also. So if you look at this study where they have assessed fecal calprotectin and use ulcerative colitis endoscopic index of severity. So as the fecal calprotectin level increases, the endoscopic severity increases. The same thing applies for Crohn's disease. The fecal calprotectin level is expected to rise as the severity of Crohn's disease increase. This is the major important part which we should all keep in mind when we are labeling or when we are considering fecal calprotectin. That is the site of involvement. Now, fecal calprotectin correlates better with colonic disease than with ileal disease. And there may be a false negative result if ileal disease only is there. So if you look at this study, fecal calprotectin correlates with active colonic inflammatory bowel disease, but not with small intestinal Crohn's disease, as the heading suggests, where they are looked at 72 in IBD patients. And if you look at the two diagrams, on the left, it shows sensitivity specificity for small bowel Crohn's, and you see it is very poor. But when it comes to a large bowel Crohn's, the sensitivity specificity AUROC is very good for colonic disease. And this is a systemic review, and all studies have concluded that correlation between fecal calprotectin is noted only at a large bowel location. At a small bowel location, the correlation between the disease and fecal calprotectin is not there. So this just recently published, they have said that with a sensitivity of just 36%, fecal calprotectin alone does not accurately reflect isolated L1 disease activity. A significant lower threshold should be applied for increasing its performance for isolated small bowel Crohn's disease monitoring. So a person having small bowel symptoms and fecal calprotectin negative, yet you would not be able to exclude a small bowel Crohn's, and you might need an imaging, which may be an MR or a CT or sometimes a colonoscopy. Same thing applies with ulcerative colitis. So if you look at ulcerative colitis, now ulcerative colitis affects the entire large bowel only. So, but in the early or a proctitis stage, the correlation is not good. So AUC for a proctitis is just 0.64, while it is more than 85 for left-sided or a pancolitis disease. Overall, it may be good, but you may miss out proctitis if you are just relying on fecal calprotectin. So on site of involvement, we need to know that fecal calprotectin is for colonic disease, not for small bowel disease, and even in colonic disease, ulcerative colitis, if mild proctitis is there, it may be falsely negative. Once we know, we need to look at the response to treatment. As we all know, as the treatment progresses, the fecal calprotectin decreases. If you look at this study where there is excellent correlation with biopsy result on response to treatment, and a normalized fecal calprotectin at 8 weeks means a complete response. And when there is no change in fecal calprotectin level, that means that the endoscopic remission is not going to be there. What is more important is predict failure and need for colectomy. Now, a person who comes to us with a fecal calprotectin of 1500 and we start treatment, we should be mentally prepared whether this patient is likely to be responding or not. So this is what the study says, that in this study of 90 patients where 35% required colectomy for acute severe ulcerative colitis, if you look at the numbers, for colectomy 1200 versus 887, for corticosteroid non-responders more than 1000, infliximab non-responder more than 1600, more than 1700. So higher calprotectin level is a sign that the patient may not respond to treatment. The other thing is you need to keep a follow-up of fecal calprotectin. The first level, they have said that after 3 days of IV steroids, if the fecal calprotectin level remains above 1000, that means that the patient is likely to fail IV steroids response and they should not be continued further, and we should consider other therapy. So there is now growing importance of change in fecal calprotectin level rather than an absolute fecal calprotectin level. So in this study, 32 Crohn's disease patient, if the fecal calprotectin level fell less than 70% after an induction therapy, then the response to anti-TNF therapy is going to be suboptimal. So fecal calprotectin level, if we monitor, we can predict endoscopic response as well as clinical response. This is failure. Now coming to success of the treatment, that is remission and mucosal healing rate. So once we start treatment and if the fecal calprotectin normalizes, then there is no need for an endoscopy to confirm that. A normal fecal calprotectin would tell us that the person has to have endoscopic remission as well. So look at a study in 268 patients where they used a cutoff of 81 that showed a specificity of 0.81 and which further improved after adding CRP and albumin level. Now coming to 6 weeks. So in these patients, if at 6 weeks your fecal calprotectin level decreases to less than 250, so if at 6 weeks your fecal calprotectin comes to not abnormal range, then the chances that the patient is going to be in complete remission at the end of 1 year can be predicted. That is more than 3 times increased chances of achieving a remission at 52 weeks. So at 6 weeks, it helps us decide whether the person is likely to be in a good zone or not. And this is what it mentions. See, if the person with persistently normal fecal calprotectin has very low risk of progression, however, persistently abnormal fecal calprotectin have very high risk of progression of disease. So, can patient with ulcerative colitis also be used fecal calprotectin can also be used. And yes, all the studies have said that fecal calprotectin is a biomarker for assessing histological activity in patients with UC, and a cutoff of 100 to 200 should be used to spare patients from an unnecessary endoscopy and biopsy. So a person of ulcerative colitis, you start treatment and the patient is clinically well, you follow up this patient with a fecal calprotectin and it is less than 200, then you don't need to do an endoscopy to prove that the patient is in remission. It also predicts mucosal healing. So if persistently less than 50, then it means that the mucosal healing is achieved. And as we know, that mucosal healing is the holy grail for treating IBD. This is a meta-analysis just published where fecal calprotectin in assessment of mucosal healing is shown. And you see the studies. All studies have shown a beneficial response, and 13.8 is the odd ratio. So fecal calprotectin is the surrogate marker, can be used for surrogate marker for mucosal healing. And at 8 weeks and 852 weeks, if we follow, those who had normal fecal calprotectin would have a definite chances of histological remission as well as a complete endoscopic and clinical remission. Now, a person who is having remission, we also need to understand whether there is chances of relapse or not. So a person having a rise in fecal calprotectin can be used to predict that this person is likely to have a relapse. This is taken from calprotectin and inflammatory bowel disease, a review where they have carried out and so many studies, and the systemic review has shown that it is useful in predicting clinical relapse with good sensitivity and good specificity. Now, Crohn's disease patients have very high likelihood that they would undergo a surgery. So if after surgery, the fecal calprotectin is expected to normalize, and even after normalization, they would have a recurrence of disease. So just by monitoring fecal calprotectin, we can tell whether the patient is likely to have recurrence or not. And there are n number of articles stating the same thing, that a person undergoing Crohn's surgery resection with normal fecal calprotectin, but if there is rise in fecal calprotectin, it indicates endoscopic relapse, recurrence as well. So 6 months after surgery, if the patient has fecal calprotectin less than 50, it means that the patient is likely to be in remission and there is no recurrence, and we don't need to do an endoscopy. This is about delta fecal calprotectin. So nowadays, from an absolute value, people have changed to change in level of fecal calprotectin. So a person of Crohn's disease who undergoes a surgery, and at the end of 3 months after surgery, if even there is 10% rise in the fecal calprotectin level from baseline, then it indicates a recurrence of disease. Just now, small things. For a patient with pouchitis, a person who undergoes IPAA for ulcerative colitis, even they develop pouchitis, fecal calprotectin can be utilized. Pediatric age, we need to be quite cautious at the cutoffs, because we know that there are different cutoffs of normal fecal calprotectin levels at different age. So before considering it to be abnormal, we need to check at what age the patient is. And this is from 0 to 18 years, the normal fecal calprotectin levels in more than 11,000 individuals. And if we see that median level starts decreasing as the age increases. And even in pediatric population, as the severity of disease increases, fecal calprotectin level increases, and it can differentiate patients with clinical as well as IBD with non-IBD patients. These are few important sentences which I've taken from the recent position paper published by European Society for Pediatric Gastroenterology and Nutritional Gastroenterology Committee. And you read this sentence. First is fecal calprotectin is a better indicator of the possibility of IBD than serum inflammatory markers. First, so CBC CRP can be used, but fecal calprotectin is important. In IBD patient in clinical remission with minor or absent clinical symptoms, fecal calprotectin may be used to confirm remission. We need to include fecal calprotectin measures in the laboratory investigations of IBD patients at least every 6 months during follow-up, even in remission, unless clinical pictures suggest a relapse where earlier investigation is indicated. So every 6 months, this patient should get a fecal calprotectin level done. And consider endoscopic evaluation in IBD patients in clinical remission with a fecal calprotectin more than 300. Coming to asymptomatic relatives, so if one of the member of the family has got IBD, then their family members can also undergo fecal calprotectin level to screen subclinical intestinal infection. Final others, it has been used in any intestinal disease, but I will not go into detail of that. But this is something which we should have in the back of our mind, where fecal calprotectin can be falsely elevated. That is, certain all large bowel diseases, it can be falsely elevated. Patients on NSAIDs or PPI can have falsely elevated fecal calprotectin levels. So we need to make sure that the patients are not taking these medicines before asking them to undergo fecal calprotectin level. Because we are all going through pandemic, I think something needs to come out of pandemic. So last few slides, if a PCR confirmed case of COVID-19 has high calprotectin level, that is serum calprotectin level, then there is more likelihood that this patient may develop cytokine storm and have developed complications, while a low serum calprotectin level may need just a regular follow-up. So to assess that significance, there is just a published systemic review and meta-analysis of 10 studies where 613 patients who were RT-PCR positive, and it showed that calprotectin at baseline had a prognostic importance. And this is the diagram. If you look at the bottom, serum calprotectin level, higher calprotectin level have more severe disease. Something just about patient at their home and we at our clinic. So non-invasive monitoring of IBD in post-COVID era, it has been said that patient at his home buys the kit now like a COVID kit, takes the sample, puts it onto the cassette, takes a photograph, send it to the system, it's transmitted, and the results are displayed. And patients are quite happy with such a thing. And if you look at the survey, because of convenience, faster result, comfort, less anxiety, and easy to use, people do prefer point of care fecal calprotectin testing in patients with IBD. So to end my talk, fecal calprotectin forms an integral part of screening and follow-up of patients of IBD. COVID-19 times have further enhanced the need for such a non-invasive marker of IBD, but we should always keep at the back of our mind that it helps ruling out the disease and it is not specific for IBD. Only once we know it is an IBD, then it has multiple further uses for following up patients. These are all the institutes where I work, and these are my teachers I'm thankful to.
Thank you, Dr. Pathik, for such interesting presentation.
Thank you.
So for our next presentation, I would like to call Dr. Himanshu Majumdar. He's a senior consultant, clinical chemistry and biochemical genetics, Dr. Lal Path Labs. He is responsible for validation of various tests of clinical chemistry and biochemical genetics, and for assistance in research, evaluation, and validation of frontline technologies at Dr. Lal Path Labs. His area of interest include maternal serum screening and clinical application of electrophoresis, immunofixation, as well as HPLC studies. Dr. Himanshu, please.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Today I would like to discuss on a topic which is very interesting, upcoming, and gaining importance gradually. Fecal calprotectin as a marker of inflammatory bowel disease. The various aspects of fecal calprotectin and its utility has already been discussed by my previous speaker, who threw light on almost all the aspects. I'm just going to brief some important points regarding its utility in clinical practice and in diagnostic purpose. So calprotectin, a little bit of biochemistry. It's a 36 kilodalton calcium and zinc binding protein which represents about 60% of the soluble proteins of cytoplasm and granulocytes. It's extremely resistant to intestinal pancreatic secretions. Roseth in 1992 demonstrated that calprotectin is stable in stool sample for up to 7 days at room temperature. If we consider about inflammatory bowel disease or irritable bowel syndrome, these two conditions have common symptoms and consequently are very difficult to be differentiated. Inflammatory bowel disease, which mainly encompasses ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, they generally need referral to a secondary care center, whereas irritable bowel syndrome, which is a functional condition, can be managed in primary care setup. Crohn's disease can affect any part of the lower gastrointestinal tract, but ulcerative colitis generally remain restricted to colon and rectum. Now, calprotectin, it's an inflammatory marker. It's one of 21 different S100 protein family members, which represents around 60% of the cytoplasmic neutrophil protein. In case of inflammatory bowel disease, it leads to cell migration and increase in the calprotectin levels. This is a paper showing the diagnostic approaches in clinical practice for irritable bowel syndrome. Here you can see the traditional symptom-based criteria that effectively identify irritable bowel syndrome but are not easily applied in clinical practice, leaving more than 40% of the patients to experience the symptoms even up to a span of 5 years without being diagnosed. It's a functional gastrointestinal disorder, which is mainly characterized by abdominal pain or discomfort and altered bowel habits. What are the challenges we face in irritable bowel syndrome diagnosis? The symptoms of IBS are heterogeneous, they wax and wane over time, and frequently overlap or coexist with symptoms of other common GI and non-GI disorders. Unfortunately, no symptom or test is pathognomonic for IBS. Symptoms overlap with symptoms found in other disorders like chronic constipation, functional dyspepsia, GERD, inflammatory bowel disease, celiac disease, and so on. It can even coexist with other functional disorders, mostly fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, chronic pelvic pain, and other psychological conditions. The alarm features that have traditionally increased the suspicion of an organic condition, they include rectal bleeding, weight loss, iron deficiency anemia, nocturnal symptoms, and family history of such organic disease as colorectal cancer, IBD, or celiac disease. However, with the exception of anemia and weight loss, they have a very good specificity for organic disease. Most of these alarm features also have poor overall accuracy. So medical concerns about missing an organic pathology have contributed to the practice of treating IBS as a diagnosis of exclusion. So, is this table visible? The font size is very low.
It's a little blurry.
It's basically a comparison between symptom-based criteria for diagnosis of IBS as per different researchers and authors, which states that as per Manning et al., the abdominal pain, which is relieved by defecation, more frequent stools with onset of pain, looser stool with onset of pain, these kind of symptoms, irrespective of their duration, has a diagnostic performance of sensitivity of around 78% and specificity of around 72%. Cruz et al. Says the symptoms which are reported by the patient, including a form, abdominal pain, flatulence, or bowel irregularity, description of abdominal pain as burning, very strong, terrible. These symptoms for a duration of more than 2 years, if we consider, they have a sensitivity of 77% and specificity of 89% in diagnosis of irritable bowel syndrome. So, and this is a comparison table of traditional diagnostic methods, which includes CBC, TSH, stool for ovum and parasites, etc., which are inexpensive, but disadvantages is that limited value in identifying the organic disease. Stool for ovine parasites, they are also non-invasive, inexpensive, but has the same disadvantage of limited use in identifying organic condition. Hydrogen breath test, it may be used when lactose indigestion is suspected. It's a non-invasive test, but it needs specialized equipment, dedicated space, and other facilities. So endoscopy, colonoscopy, they are useful in identifying organic disorders, particularly IBD, colorectal cancer, and microscopic colitis in patients with irritable bowel syndrome or inflammatory bowel disease condition and alarm features, but they are expensive and without alarm features has a low diagnostic yield. They need expertise and well-trained person, a good setup, not available in especially in remote areas and all. So if we consider calprotectin as an aid in the diagnosis of gastrointestinal disease, patient presenting with symptoms of abdominal pain and change in bowel habit after proper history taking and physical examination, if we consider fecal calprotectin estimation, then we can have two scenarios. Fecal calprotectin elevated means inflammation is present, which encompasses conditions like inflammation, infection, inflammatory bowel disease, malignancy, pancreatic insufficiency, celiac disease. And if fecal calprotectin is not elevated, which means there is no evidence of inflammation, this encompasses basically pancreatic insufficiency, celiac disease, microscopic colitis, food intolerance, some rare disorders, and irritable bowel syndrome. How can we use fecal calprotectin in a primary care setup? A patient aged 16 to 40 years with new onset lower gastrointestinal symptoms for more than 4 weeks where IBD is suspected, we should look for the alarm features like rectal bleeding plus any one of the following, which include abdominal pain, changes in bowel habit, weight loss, iron deficiency anemia, or abdominal, rectal, or anal mass or unexplained anal ulceration. If these are and IBD remains a suspected diagnosis, then we should go for urgent referral to gastroenterology. And IBD doesn't remain an suspected diagnosis, then we can consider referral to for suspected cancer according to NICE guidelines. But if these alarm features are not present, we can consider estimation of fecal calprotectin. If the value is less than 100 microgram per gram of stool, it's most likely irritable bowel syndrome. And if the values are high, beyond 250 microgram per gram of stool, then inflammatory bowel disease is more likely and referral to gastroenterology is recommended. For a gray zone part, for 100 to 250 microgram per gram of stool, we can consider repeat testing or routine referral to gastroenteroscopy. This is as per the British Society of Gastroenterology guideline for inflammatory bowel disease 2018. This is the proposed clinical algorithm UK, where we can use fecal calprotectin as an aid in diagnosis. So I'm not going into details. These already these things has been covered by my previous speaker. So fecal calprotectin in differential diagnosis of inflammatory bowel disease versus irritable bowel syndrome. As already mentioned by my previous speaker, a normal level of fecal calprotectin has very high negative predictive value for inflammatory bowel disease. By contrast, the positive predictive value of the levels above the assay reference range, normally defined as less than 50 microgram per gram of stool by most of the manufacturers, is low. Now, what are the limitations of fecal calprotectin? The clinician should take into account and address the following reasons apart from irritable inflammatory bowel disease for an elevated fecal calprotectin, which can be elevated in infections like bacterial dysentery or H. pylori gastritis, malignancy, which include colorectal, gastric cancer, intestinal lymphoma, drugs, mainly non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, PPIs, untreated food allergy, age less than 5 years, and other conditions like reflux disease, cystic fibrosis, untreated celiac disease, etc. False negative values of fecal calprotectin are observed in celiac disease and giardiasis. Fecal calprotectin can also be used in monitoring response to therapy. Its levels significantly correlate with endoscopic assessment of disease extent, mucosal healing, and histological activity, and reflect microscopic disease activity even in the phase of macroscopic healing. Therefore, fecal calprotectin can be used as a biomarker to assess the response to therapy in case of inflammatory bowel disease. How to predict clinical relapse in inflammatory bowel disease patients. This is a paper 2016 article on the same, which says that inflammatory bowel disease have a nocturnal course characterized by altering periods of remission and relapse. Disease flares occurs in a random way and are currently unpredictable for the most part. Predictors of benign or unfavorable clinical course are required to facilitate treatment decisions and avoid overtreatment. Clinical variables, serological markers, fecal markers, and genetic tests are available to predict relapse, but none of them is single, if used alone, is highly predictive. Calprotectin can be used as a follow-up tool also. Its concentrations are generally higher in patients with relapse than those who are in remission. Fecal calprotectin may also be useful for predicting relapse. Its predictive value is greater in presenting with ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease with colonic or ileocolonic involvement and inflammatory pattern. It's been observed that patients with Crohn's disease and calprotectin level of more than 200 microgram per gram of stool has a 4 times higher chances of relapse than those with lower marker concentration. Similarly, in case of ulcerative colitis, a calprotectin level of more than 120 microgram per gram of stool is associated with around 6-fold increase in the probability of disease activity outbreak. So, how to predict relapse in case of IBD? After clinical history and disease phenotype, we should look for the following criteria: young age at onset, disease extension, any short previous remission, perianal localization, steroid need at the onset. If at least 2 of these criteria is present, along with a CRP level of more than 20 and fecal calprotectin level of more than 250, close monitoring and aggressive treatment is recommended. This is the algorithm to identify Crohn's disease patients with high risk of clinical relapse. Similarly, this is the algorithm in using the criteria of age at onset, extensive colitis, and number of previous relapses, along with the use of fecal calprotectin. If at least one of the criteria are present and fecal calprotectin level are more than 190 microgram per gram of stool, there is a high possibility of clinical relapse. Close monitoring and aggressive treatment is recommended. So, coming to the laboratory point of view, these are the platforms presently available for fecal calprotectin estimation: ELISA using polyclonal antibodies or monoclonal antibodies, CLIA using monoclonal antibodies, and PETIA using polyclonal antibodies. Recently, point of care testings are also becoming popular. So, a novel automated calprotectin analysis method increases the diagnostic accuracy of the test. If we consider ELISA and CLIA platform, Liaison CLIA platform for estimation of fecal calprotectin with colonoscopically proved cases, which are 24 positive and 38 negative cases, we can see that in case of Liaison, the positive predictive value is around 69%, with a negative predictive value of around 93.3%, which is much better as compared to ELISA platform. The positive likelihood ratio of Liaison CLIA platform is around 4.4, and negative likelihood ratio is around 0.11, which is also better if you compare with ELISA platform. And the diagnostic odds ratio is around 38.5 in case of Liaison CLIA platform. Lack of reference method is a limitation in this assay. The lack of interchangeability of results from different assays is there, which may be due to several possible reasons. The antibodies used in different assays are directed against different complexes of the fecal calprotectin protein. The methods use different antibodies like monoclonal versus polyclonal, of different origins like native versus recombinant, and different immunoassay techniques. Finally, all these assays use different calibrators. So interchangeable, a comparison of across platform comparison is not generally possible, and interchangeability is lacking in case of fecal calprotectin estimation. There is very high coefficient of variation also in this test. Intra-individual fecal calprotectin variability in case of IBD patient is demonstrated as high as with a mean CV of around 39.4%. Also, intra-individual variability both during the day and from one day to the next day are high, with a median CV of around 52% and around 41%. So this is a table showing sensitivities and specificities of different fecal calprotectin assays at an optimum cutoff. The manufacturer cutoff in all those platforms and assay methods is the same, which should be less than 50 microgram per gram of stool. If we compare different platforms like ELISA calprotectin, diazorin, and other organic Euroimmune and other platforms which are available for fecal calprotectin estimation, we can see that at an defined cutoff or optimum cutoff of 50 microgram, the sensitivity and specificity we get based on diazorin calprotectin assay with 100% sensitivity and around 79% specificity. So to summarize, for different indications, right from a differential diagnosis between inflammatory bowel disease and irritable bowel syndrome, for therapeutic follow-up, for prediction of clinical relapse, if we look for a non-invasive test, if we look for an inexpensive test, and if we look for a quick test, fecal calprotectin is the answer to all these questions in the diagnosis of inflammatory bowel disease and its differentiation from irritable bowel syndrome. Thank you.
So if anyone have any questions, please write in the chat box given towards your right. So no questions so far. So there is okay. Can we request lab to perform FC by CLIA, Dr. Himanshu?
We are performing by CLIA only.
Okay.
No, but when we are requesting, for example, I request fecal calprotectin. I do not mention whether by ELISA or whether by CLIA. So should we be specific and requesting the test in that sense?
So It depends on where we are sending the sample and what platform that particular lab is using. If we consider LPL, here at LPL we are using CLIA platform only, looking at its better sensitivity and specificity. The instrument we are using is Lyson only, and we are getting good results on that.
So another question is, does fecal calprotectin will help to reduce the colonoscopy burden to clinicians?
Like this. So, in a study which I actually removed the slide, if primary practitioner carries out fecal calprotectin levels before referring a patient to a gastroenterologist for colonoscopy, it reduces colonoscopy burden by 2/3. So 67% reduction in colonoscopy was found out in a study. And even in the current publication where from UK, where they have said looked at GPs who are taking care of all the patients over there primarily and then referring patients to a gastroenterologist, if they carry out fecal calprotectin levels, very low proportion of them actually get referred for a colonoscopy to lung IVD.
Okay, so the question is, what is the approx ratio of calprotectin testing possible in Indian population who need colonoscopy?
Ideally, all young individuals. See, in elderly, where the suspicion of polyps, adenoma, carcinoma is high. So, in that case, anyhow, Western world performs screening colonoscopy. So, when they come to us with abdominal symptoms, new onset, change in bowel habits, we should consider colonoscopy and not just depend on fecal calprotectin. But as I said, in young individuals, the negative predictive value is 100%. So less than 40 years of age or less than 40 to 45 years of age, we should carry out fecal calprotectin for all patients with abdominal symptoms.
Okay, how to collect? So any further queries? So, sir, another question is, how can calprotectin test in TB patients useful? Does it has any cross reactivity calprotectin measurement?
See, there have been a study published where they have looked at differentiating tuberculosis from disease by using fecal calprotectin. But that is just one anecdotal report. Overall, it would fail because see, fecal calprotectin is mainly for colonic disease, and ileal Crohn's anyhow becomes ileal, and the chances of differentiating it just based on absolute number seems unlikely, practically unlikely.
So there is one query, Dr. Patek.
Was I not audible on my answer?
Sir,
Am I audible?
Yeah, sir, totally fine. So,
Yeah.
sir, there's one question from like my team. If there is any correlation with the COVID and the fecal calprotectin, how can you explain the correlation between the two?
I don't think that it failed to show a correlation. In the previous meta-analysis slide that I presented,
Okay.
it actually failed to show between fecal. It was serum calprotectin which it correlated. And a calprotectin is an inflammatory marker. So whenever there is increased inflammation or cytokine storm, it is expected to rise. But in this case of COVID, the meta-analysis has showed correlation with I would say serum calprotectin and not the fecal calprotectin. I can project this. Can I project the slide?
Okay. Thank you, sir. So, sir, there is no further queries. So, on this note, we are ending this session here. I would like to thank Dr. Pathik for an insightful presentation and giving us time for this webinar. And my sincere thanks to Dr. Himanshu. And thanks everyone for attending the webinar. Hope the session is